Significance in the seemingly ordinary. The breaking point itself may have occurred not at a state funeral, but in a deceptively simple setting, perhaps during a visit to a community project supporting bereaved children, where a child's earnest question about loss unlocks his own, or at a solemn event commemorating a national tragedy, where the collective grief in the room resonates too deeply with his own private store of sorrow, or even during a quiet conversation with an elderly veteran who shares a story of lifelong sacrifice, mirroring the sacrifice William feels in his own life's path. The trigger is never the grand spectacle, but the quiet, human moment that inadvertently taps the well of accumulated feeling, bypassing the royal guard and reaching the man beneath. A mirror to our own expectations. The world's response to William's tears was instantaneous and multifaceted, serving as a mirror to our own complex relationship with public figures. The primary reaction was profound shock. This deviated so drastically from the established script of royal impassivity that it momentarily shattered the fourth wall between the monarchy and the public. People were confronted not with a prince, but with a person. This authenticity, so rare and unvarnished, was both startling and deeply moving. It challenged the carefully maintained narrative of untouchable dignity, replacing it with one of shared humanity. Empathy and the collective we. From this shock sprang a powerful wave of global empathy. Social media flooded with messages of support, not for His Royal Highness, but for William. People saw in his tears a reflection of their own struggles with grief, pressure, and the exhausting demand to always be strong for others. He became in that moment a universal symbol for anyone who has ever had to compartmentalize their pain to get through the day. His vulnerability gave others permission to acknowledge their own. Not all reactions were sympathetic. A minority, steeped in a traditionalist view of the monarchy, saw the display as a worrisome breach of conduct. To them, it signaled a softening, a dangerous step away from the unimpeachable, enigmatic strength that is the monarchy's brand. This criticism, however, was largely drowned out by the outpouring of empathy, highlighting the evolving public expectation. We no longer want unfeeling icons, we seek relatable leaders. Most significantly, the moment became an unintentional but powerful landmark for the very causes William champions. It demonstrated, more eloquently than any speech, the central thesis of modern mental health advocacy, that strength is not the absence of feeling, but the courage to acknowledge it. His tears did not weaken his image, they complicated and humanized it, giving tangible, undeniable proof to his words. It showed that even those who seem to have it all together are fighting battles we cannot see. The impact of this single, raw moment extends far beyond the day's news cycle, potentially altering perceptions of leadership, masculinity, and the monarchy itself. William's moment of vulnerability may well be remembered as a pivotal point in the modernization of the British monarchy. It signaled a decisive move away from the emotionless sovereign model toward a more integrated, holistic version of leadership, one where humanity and duty are not opposites, but necessary complements. It showed that a future king can be compassionate, emotionally intelligent, and resilient because of, not in spite of, his capacity to feel deeply. This aligns the institution more closely with contemporary values, where authenticity and empathy are prized leadership qualities. On a global scale, William's tears delivered a potent blow to archaic notions of stoic, unfeeling masculinity. Here was a man at the apex of traditional male privilege, a prince, a pilot, a sportsman, publicly displaying what some might wrongly label as weakness. In doing so, he redefined strength for millions of boys and men, demonstrating that true fortitude lies in emotional honesty, that tears are not a surrender but an expression of depth, and that carrying a heavy load sometimes means acknowledging how heavy it truly is. For William personally, this unintentional public catharsis, while undoubtedly painful, could prove to be liberating. It may allow him to reconcile the conflicting strands of his identity, the duty-bound prince and the feeling man, into a more integrated whole. By having the world witness and accept his moment of fracture, the pressure to maintain a flawless facade may lessen, fractionally. It could grant him a slightly more permeable boundary between his public and private self, making his immense burden a fraction more bearable. The moment of breakdown is a window into the perpetual, exhausting tension that defines William's existence. For William, there is no off-duty in the traditional sense. Every public appearance, every walkabout, every speech is a performance where he must modulate his tone, his expression, his body language. The smile must be warm, but not overly familiar. The concern must seem genuine, but not partisan. The sorrow must be dignified, but not overwhelming. This constant self-regulation is a psychological tax, draining the emotional reserves needed for a private life. His life choices, career, home, friendships, even how his children are raised are never entirely his own. They are made in consultation with the firm, weighed against tradition, public opinion, and security. This gilded cage, while offering immense privilege, severely restricts the spontaneous, authentic experiences that forge a typical human identity and provide essential emotional ballast. His grief, like his joy, must often be scheduled and managed. Ultimately, his is a path of profound loneliness. Few can truly understand the unique pressures he faces. His wife, Catherine, is his closest ally and confidant, but even she entered this world from outside. The circle of those who can relate without agenda or awe is vanishingly small. He stands, as heirs have for centuries, in a solitary space between the public and the private, the institution and the individual, bearing a weight that is, in its peculiar way, unimaginable to those not born to it. Prince William's heartbreaking moment of public grief was more than a news story. It was a cultural revelation. The world did not expect it because we have been complicit in upholding the very image that made it so shocking. We have expected our royals, our leaders, to be paragons of unflinching strength, mistaking emotional silence for stability. In those few unguarded seconds, William did more than cry. He shattered an antiquated ideal and ushered in a new, more compassionate paradigm. He demonstrated that the greatest courage can be found not in hiding our cracks, but in surviving them in full view. He proved that a leader's legitimacy can be deepened, not diminished, by their proven capacity to endure profound human feeling. The tears of a future king are not a sign of a monarchy in crisis, but of one slowly, painfully, and necessarily evolving. They water the ground for a more emotionally honest institution, one that can lead not just from tradition and duty, but from a place of integrated, acknowledged humanity. The world may not have expected it, but in that heartbreaking moment, Prince William showed us the only way forward: to bear the silent weight, not by pretending it isn't heavy, but by sometimes bravely letting the world see the strain, and in doing so, making the burden a little less lonely to carry. The strength was always there. In the fracture, we finally saw its true, resilient form. The world knows the image, the stoic heir, the future king, the embodiment of duty and reserve. Prince William, Duke of Cambridge, has spent a lifetime being sculpted by expectation, trained in the art of emotional composure, his personal landscape often hidden behind the polished veneer of royal protocol. We have seen him solemn, dignified, supportive, and strong, especially in times of profound family and national tragedy. But we have rarely, if ever, seen him broken. That is why the moment, captured in a fleeting, unguarded glimpse, resonated with such seismic force. It was not during a planned speech or a staged memorial, but in the quiet aftermath of a public engagement, a crack in the armor that revealed the immense, silent weight he carries. Prince William, overwhelmed by a surge of emotion, turned away, his shoulders bowing not under the weight of a crown, but under the burden of memory, duty, and personal loss. The world watched, collectively holding its breath, as a man known for his steadfastness was, for a few heartbreaking seconds, simply a grieving son, an exhausted father, and a human being stretched thin. This was the moment the world didn't expect, a raw testament to the invisible cost of a life lived in the public eye, and a poignant reminder that behind the titles and the tradition, the heartbeat is profoundly human. To understand the seismic nature of William's tears, one must first comprehend the fortress built around his emotional expression. His training began not in adulthood, but in childhood, shaped by the very architecture of the monarchy he is destined to lead. The legacy of never complain, never explain. William was raised in the shadow of a royal motto that prioritizes impassivity. From his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, he learned the lesson of a lifetime: duty first, feeling last. The Queen's own legendary stoicism, her keep calm and carry on ethos, forged in war and sustained over 7 decades, set the template. Emotion was a private currency, not for public expenditure. For William, observing this, the message was clear. Strength is synonymous with silence. Vulnerability is a liability in the line of duty. The trauma of the public gaze. William's formative years were a masterclass in traumatic exposure. As a boy, he walked behind his mother's coffin, a global spectacle of private agony. Every stage of his grief, confusion, anger, sorrow, was photographed, analyzed, and commodified. The world wept with him, but it also watched incessantly. This created a fundamental and entirely reasonable distrust of the public sphere as a place for authentic feeling. To show true emotion was to offer up the most sacred parts of oneself for consumption. The only logical defense was a carefully cultivated detachment. The modernizing mandates and its pressure. As a key figure in the monarchy's effort to modernize and remain relevant, William, alongside Catherine, has championed causes like mental health awareness. He has spoken courageously about the importance of being comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, and encouraged others to talk about their struggles. Yet herein lies a crushing paradox. He is the advocate for a conversation he cannot fully participate in. He must promote emotional openness while simultaneously embodying an institution that demands emotional control. This places him in an impossible bind, advocating for a vulnerability he is structurally prohibited from fully demonstrating, adding a layer of personal and professional tension to his already complex emotional world. The specific moment of breakdown is rarely a spontaneous event. It is the final, overwhelming wave in a rising tide of pressure. For William, this tide is a confluence of private and public currents. The accumulation of personal loss. William's life has been marked by significant, echoing absences. The loss of his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, is the foundational trauma, a wound that never truly heals but merely scar tissue over. The death of his grandfather, Prince Philip, a towering figure of steadfast support and a link to both his grandmother and a bygone era of royal service, represented another profound personal and familial pillar removed. Then came the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. Not just his monarch, but his granny, the central, constant star in his universe. Each loss is compounded, not isolated. Each grief layered upon the last without full resolution, as duty immediately supplants the space for mourning. The relentless pressure of the present is equally burdensome. He is a father of 3 young children, navigating the universal challenges of parenthood under the impossible lens of global scrutiny. He carries the concerns of his own family, including the very public and painful rift with his brother, Prince Harry, a relationship fractured, played out in headlines and documentaries, representing a deep, personal heartbreak over a lost camaraderie and shared understanding. Furthermore, he shoulders the increasing responsibilities of the monarchy, stepping into roles the late queen and his father once held, aware that the institution's future relevance rests significantly on his shoulders. He is, effectively, in a perpetual state of transition and consolidation, with little room for respite.